I mean, I've always been passionate about audio production. I think a lot of us that got into audio production started like, I'm going to make records. I'm going to be in a band, right? And I did that in my teenage years, and came to came to e-media to really think about like how do you make that a career, and that led to a career in a lot of like freelance post production and music, and worked in some instrument retail as well for a while. Um, but then really got a passion for audio post production and working in advertising. So moved to Chicago in 2013 and started working at Chicago Recording Company and worked in advertising and ADR there. And then in 2016, I moved to Gimlet Media and have been working in podcasting for the last 5 years, which has just been an insane journey to see a very like burgeoning form become like big business. It's been wild. So now part of Spotify, head of audio production at Gimlet, but part of the broader Spotify umbrella now, which has been fascinating. I don't know what classes are in e-media
Yeah.
anymore, but I was a Bearcast member for a few years and learned a lot about just like being live on radio, which is a really hard skill to do without just jumping into the deep end.
Yeah.
Um, and also some of the more advanced audio production classes really helped me out. I think I was also in some student organizations. I was in MISA. I'm not sure if you guys still have that anymore, but was in a student organization focused on audio production, and that was a really good way to like spend some extra time outside of classes with peers to learn things. Like that's the first time I learned really what an audio compressor did. Was like me and a couple other people sitting down and like tweaking the knobs until it clicked, and was like, oh, that's what a compressor's for. And I think also just spending hours and hours in the production suites of Bearcast cutting together promos. I really learned my chops in Adobe Audition and making commercials for various local businesses. So that I would say that, and also I got a business minor, which was has been massively helpful in my career. I've worked the gamut of working in basement studios for myself or for local artists to working now for like a company that's publicly traded and kind
Yeah.
of everything in between. I think one of the beauties of like the industries that we're in is you do get those kinds of opportunities. Media production is needed everywhere, and like it's just really exploded. Like video and audio production is everywhere, from the smallest business to the biggest business, and like personal projects. That's how we communicate now. So the biggest differences are like, I think the age old story is like you get to be maybe a little bit more creative when you have unlimited time because there's no deadlines or pressure, and those are super fun passion projects, but can
Yeah.
also be frustrating because like there's never an end.
Um,
And the difference with working in a larger company is there is a lot of structure and there's money tied into things, and also marketing plans and different things that kind of take that decision making out of your control, which can be frustrating, but is
yeah.
also kind of empowering. Because especially if you're someone that is like a creative that like really wants to dig into the project and aren't as good as setting deadlines for yourself, like you have a deadline you have to work to. Um, there's a lot more voices when you're working with brands or you're working with larger companies. There's a lot of feedback coming from a lot of different places. So when you're working in the basement on your own record, the feedback is your band members about like what do we like? Is this our sound? Now when you're working in advertising, especially, you're dealing a lot with is this the brand's voice, and you're dealing with marketing, and you're dealing with a lot more input. So it can slow the process down, but
Yeah.
ultimately it can make a better product as well. So the number of people, the amount of feedback is really the biggest differences. The way I came into Spotify was I worked for a smaller company called Gimlet Media that was a podcast startup, and I joined that company when we were about 30 employees, and I started as a contractor, and then I got hired on full time, and I saw that company grow from 30 to 80 to 100, and then get acquired by Spotify. So it's been a really interesting experience just to see the inner workings of how that can work and how like smaller studios can work within a bigger company. I think like one of the greatest things is like working for a company that has a lot of resources and really believes in what you're doing, which as an independent company and as a freelancer, a lot of times you don't have that, right? You really have to like sell that like the thing I'm doing is important. And when you have someone that has a lot of resources that can say, we recognize what you're doing is important and we want to supercharge it, that's super exciting. Um, they also flew us all out to Sweden for a week, and we got to do what they call intro days, which was a lot of fun. Spotify's headquarters are in Stockholm, Sweden, and they flew all of us Gimleters out there to spend a week like immersing ourselves in the Spotify culture, but also like hanging out in Stockholm was a big part of it. And so just working for a global company, I think is really exciting for me because we have podcasts. You know, Spotify, of course, has a music streaming platform and an audio streaming platform, and also is making heavy investments in podcasting and in audio production. And so being able to see teams in like Latin America and teams in like Europe and teams all across the world building podcasts and kind of sharing those ideas, it's like being plugged into this amazing network of creators. I've been really fortunate to work on some really interesting projects. In my time in Chicago, I think one of the most fun things I ever got to do was ADR, which is automated dialogue replacement. So you'll have people come in and do additional lines for films and things. And I got to work for a week with Spike Lee. And it was just like this insane immersion into like a genius's workflow in a really high pressure situation. But like you learn so much from those experiences. That was just, I think that's a career highlight for me. I don't know if I'll ever top that one. That one was pretty incredible.
Yeah. So currently, I'm a videographer for Fox 8 in Cleveland. My duties include, on most days, shooting reporter stories and editing them together. So basically how it goes, a reporter and myself, we will drive out to a story. I will shoot the B-roll that's needed. Get interviews, we'll bring it back to the station or we'll stay out there depending on what they want. Sometimes we have to go live early. We have a 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 7 o'clock show. We do a lot of news. So sometimes, and I work from 3 to 11. So sometimes you're just thrown right into it and you just got to be ready to go. Other days are not as intense. So most of my stories will air at 10 o'clock. And, when we get back, the reporter will write the scripts, put the sound bites in the order that they want it. And then it's basically my responsibility to edit all together and make sure that it's fed into the station so it airs. But other duties could include going live out in the fields. A lot of times our station is really big on Facebook. So we do Facebook Lives a lot. So sometimes, I'm involved with those, especially breaking news scenes for the most part. There's a fire somewhere. There's a huge protest. There's, what have you. So those type of events, you kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit. So that's most days. There are other days, on occasion, I get to shoot a Browns game here or there. So for me, that's just, I basically just shoot B-roll of the game so they can use that footage. The sports guys can use that in their sports broadcast the next day if they want to look at a certain play or talk about a certain player, so they have that in the back. And then I would go and basically go into the locker room and try to get sound from different players. And usually the sports directors will tell you which ones that you need to get. So it's Indians or Cavs. Usually it's just locker room, and like usually it have to be playoffs. So the Cavs haven't been so great lately, but the Indians have had some playoff runs as well. So like the All-Star game was something that I covered. This was going 2014 going to 2015, the 2014-2015 school year. LeBron just came back to Cleveland, and the Cavs were playing a preseason game against the Pacers at the Cintas Center. This was one of LeBron's first games back with the Cavs. I put in a media request to say, because I wanted to do a story on, an NBA game happening in Cincinnati, because that doesn't happen in Cincinnati, doesn't have an NBA team. So this is kind of an interesting event. Even though it's a preseason game, there's probably just a lot of general NBA fans that want to see LeBron, that actually want to see David West because he went to Xavier. He played for the Pacers at the time. So there was just there's a lot of cool stories I feel like we could get from there. So I put in a request, and fortunately I got one, and I got to cover the game. We got to shoot a little bit of the game and then, go into the locker room and ask questions to players. So I got to ask LeBron a question. So, and that was something that I kind of needed to experience because at Fox 8, multiple times on recent Cavs playoff runs, Indians playoff runs. We go into the locker room all the time. Browns games. You know, you don't really know what to expect the first time when you're in like a post-game scrum, because there can be a ton of people in there. To have that experience in college and kind of getting to see firsthand what the locker room is like and like what the etiquette is, so to speak, was such a fantastic experience, and something that helps me for what I do now. Now, I don't do sports every day. I shoot a lot of news, but occasionally they will have me do some sort of sporting event. And if we need to go into the locker room, like you gotta be ready, and you gotta be on your toes, because you don't want to be in a position to where you can't get what you need sound wise or even video wise.
After I graduated from UC in 2005, I got nothing to hide. But after I graduated, I pursued a career, in the industry in media production. I ended up working for two of the most powerful radio stations in my hometown of Pittsburgh, PA. So that degree certainly did not go to waste in my younger years. Kind of bounced around a little bit as technology evolved and as market conditions changed for better and for worse. Within the last couple of years, I had the chance to kind of get back into media from the media relations, public relations angle of things. I got to work in Division I athletics, which I hadn't really done since Bearcast, believe it or not. So that was an awful lot of fun. Then I'd say within the last year or so, the pandemic happened, obviously, and a lot of jobs, including the various gigs I had at other colleges and universities, were impacted at the time. So now, at least for the time being, I'm working in an unrelated industry until things until I can kind of see how things pan out. But I mean, I think about my experiences, in pursuing my degree and in being a part of Bearcast and getting involved with that in pursuit as a part of the curriculum all the time. The communication skills and the interpersonal skills that I learned how to develop and fine-tune to some degree while I was in college. Those are still things that, they never go away, no matter how old you get, it seems. And when I heard that the station was celebrating its 20th anniversary, it did kind of hit me. It was a little bit of a mix of sobering and exciting all at once. Again, 20 years. It's kind of mind blowing that time has passed by. But I look back and I feel proud, because I kind of feel like being in the group of students that was part of those, early years, those first groups that were kind of trying to shape the station and turn it into what it is in an era, before social media and before broadcast technology is what it is today. That's it almost makes me feel like a pioneer in a way. And that's another thing that has kind of followed me throughout my career. I've always been sort of the guy who innovates, or who tries to innovate or do things differently, or do things that have never been done before, or do things that not everybody else is necessarily doing. So I guess, hindsight truly being 2020, I'm still to this day much more connected to my past than I realize. getting to work with kids, and by kids I mean young men, young women, college students like yourself. Again, getting to be back in Division I athletics recently, and getting to live in the industry again, be in that sandbox, so to speak, wearing a different hat. That was like it was like being shot out of a cannon, and with all the different interpersonal skills and middle management skills and modern technological skills, media technology skills I had to kind of learn on the fly as I transitioned into that job. It's funny that I think about it, because in a way I do feel like I kind of had to go to college all over again.
Yep. So I'm currently the vice president of music and talent at Vevo. So what does that mean? Vevo, for anyone that doesn't know, is the world's largest music video network. We distribute music videos from major labels, major artists, independent labels, through YouTube and a host of off YouTube channels and platforms. So what's my role? I'm responsible again for the music and talent team in Canada, United States, Mexico, Latin America, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand. I have a counterpart that handles all of Europe. But the team that I oversee has all the direct relationships with labels, artists, and managers. We are responsible for what music videos come into our network and how we promote them and how we share them with the world. We are responsible for what artists we book to shoot our own performances and content with. So we're not just bringing in music videos, but we also shoot a lot of content with artists. And so my team decides who we're going to shoot with and is responsible for that whole process. My team's responsible for, again, all that content that comes in, whether we make it or someone sends it to us. How do we share it with the world? We're also responsible for all of Vevo's social media platforms. So anything you see on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc., all Vevo accounts, it comes from my team. And one of the newest parts that's really interesting is we're also responsible for what's called growth and optimization, which is helping our partners learn how to make good content. And when I say make good content, I don't mean like what makes an exciting music video. Should you be standing on a stage or should you have a car chase? I don't mean, should you have a long intro at the beginning or should you get right to the music? How should you title it so that people can see it? How often should you be releasing new music videos? All these things, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone. Algorithms are always a big topic of conversation and in all entertainment now. I mean, whether it's Netflix or Spotify or Vevo or YouTube or anything else. So what we try to do is we try to help our partners understand those algorithms better and give them recommendations. So it's not just, oh, great, we have the new Justin Bieber video, let's program it and share it with the world. But it's also talking to Justin Bieber's team and saying, here's what you can do to make his video even more impactful or make his album rollout even more successful. Bearcast led to my first real internship that kickstarted my career. And I do remember being in the office that we were just talking about on the phone with a guy at a record label in New York City and having the conversation about an internship. And then, and that sort of was the domino that started, everything to get me to where I am now. I went to UC, as I said, a media production major, thinking I wanted to be a music producer, to spend my life in a studio, making music and producing music. And thanks to Bearcast, I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. I definitely wanted to work in music, but what I wanted to do was share music with a wider audience. I wanted to help influence what people listen to and share new music. As I said, I started as a DJ, so I've always loved the idea of like, I found this great new artist, let me share it with the world. Bearcast gave me that opportunity. And my role at Bearcast led to my first internship. It led to me getting an internship at Virgin Records in New York City for a summer. And then that led to my first job, which led to my second job. I mean, at my entire career, I can point back to being the music director at Bearcast. And had I not gone to that first meeting of this unnamed, unlaunched student radio station, and then proceed to get involved, my career path would be completely different than it is right now. I mean, without a doubt, my favorite thing is that we work with artists of all genres and all levels, right? So we, today, Justin Bieber put out a new video, Drake put out a new video, lots of big new artists came out, but there's also all these emerging artists that we love, that we get to work with. And so that's been my favorite part. I mean, I've been at Vivo for about 9.5 years now, been in the business obviously longer than that, but like I've had the opportunity to see artists that and we're not solely responsible. No one outlet can be solely responsible in this day and age, but artists that we championed and worked with 9 years ago that are now best-selling artists, selling out arenas when touring was a thing, Grammy nominated. There's specific artists I can think of. The example I always use is that there's a rapper named Rhapsody. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not, but she was an independent, unsigned artist. My relationship with her started by me reaching out to her on Twitter about 10 years ago, even before I was at Vivo, and saying like, oh, I heard your mixtape, it's dope, would love to figure out how we can work together. Then I got to Vivo and was like, hey, I'm here now, like I want to help promote your music videos. And it just built and built and built. And then a couple of years ago, she gets nominated for some Grammys. And so like, here's this artist, like at my old job, I just reached out to on Twitter because I liked her mixtape. Now she's signed to Jay-Z's label. She's been featured on Kendrick Lamar's album and the Judas and the Black Messiah soundtrack, and all these Netflix documentaries, all these things. Like I said, signed to Jay-Z, and it started there. And I've been able to witness and be some part of that entire journey. So that's without a doubt my favorite part. I mean, we did something similar with Cincinnati's own Walk the Moon. They signed to a major record label. I remember when they came into our office 9 years ago and played acoustic for us. And we were like, these guys are great. And then we made them part of our LIFT program, which is an emerging artist program. And again, I've seen them play acoustic in our office to a venue with 100 people to a venue with a few thousand people. And like to be able to see that journey and be a part of it. And then the fact that they're from Cincinnati is just an added bonus. I think the most important thing, and as it's evidenced by what I did, is the extracurriculars and and it's not just about extracurriculars for the sake of extracurriculars. Everyone's heard that. Bearcast, right? What can you do that's involved with the business that shows that you understand at least the beginnings of it? Just keep pursuing, keep networking, and just keep talking to people and be willing to do whatever it is that you need to do. Your first job's not going to be glamorous. Even when I got my first job, I was like, did I do the right thing? I am coming home miserable almost every day. My first job, there were days I refused to listen to music outside of work because music had made me so upset that day. And part of it was just because it was new and the demands were new, and I was, and I wasn't sure if I was cut out for it. But apparently I am. So keep networking, keep trying, keep learning. Mm-hmm. The music business changes with technology, and everything else changes so quickly. Keep reading up on what's going on, whether that's what artists are happening, what deals are happening in business. Square just bought Tidal yesterday. Like, these are the things people should know.